Full story. They spent $50,000 of her money, then acted like she didn't exist in their lives. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Like no matter how much you give, you're never truly seen? Today on Silent Wars, we share the full story of a daughter who gave everything until her family crossed the line. If you're ready for a story that will stir your heart and open your eyes, please like this video and subscribe to Silent Wars for more real-life stories that matter. I grew up in a quiet suburb just outside Des Moines, Iowa. Our house wasn't anything fancy: 3 bedrooms, a swing in the front yard, and a backyard that got swallowed by snow every winter. It should have felt like home, but to me, it always felt more like a stage. And I was never the star of the show. My name is Hannah. I was 5 when my little sister Madison was born, and everything changed. Before she came along, I was just your typical kid. I drew pictures on the fridge with magnets, danced in the living room in footy pajamas, and got tucked in every night with a kiss on the forehead. My parents called me their sunshine. I even had a coffee mug that said "Daddy's little girl." But when Madison entered the picture, it was as if someone flipped a switch, and the spotlight that had once been on me shifted entirely to her. It wasn't subtle. It was a full-blown transformation. Suddenly, every photo on the wall was of Madison, her crawling, her first steps, her first ballet recital. I was still in the pictures, but blurry, off to the side, usually holding a juice box or sweeping confetti off the floor. At family parties, she was introduced as the little prodigy, while I helped Aunt Claire carry in the casseroles. I didn't get it at first. I figured this was just what happens when there's a baby in the house. Babies cry, they need things, and sure, they get a lot of attention. I told myself it was temporary, but the truth was, I never really got that spotlight back. By the time Madison was 3, she had a designated performance space in the living room. Mom would roll back the rug, set up her pink ballet bar, and invite the whole family over to watch her spin in circles, while Dad filmed like he was making a documentary for the National Ballet. And me? I was usually in the kitchen, pouring lemonade and setting out snacks. No one noticed when I brought home straight A's. No one clapped when I won 2nd place in the local art contest. They didn't even hang my painting on the fridge. I once spent 3 days building a cardboard castle for school. I was so proud of it. When I showed it to my mom, she glanced up from tying Madison's shoes and said, "That's nice, honey." Then she went right back to fussing over Madison's hair for her playdate. It was like I had slowly faded from their line of sight. Madison didn't ask for any of this, of course. She wasn't mean. She was just the center of the universe. She had this natural magnetism that drew people in. Blonde curls, dimples, and a laugh that could light up a room. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the helpful one, the one who knew how to load the dishwasher properly. I never hated her, but I hated how I was made to feel invisible because of her. The only time I ever got any attention was when something went wrong. If Madison dropped a bowl of cereal, it was because I hadn't poured it right. If she scraped her knee, it was because I wasn't watching her closely enough. I remember one summer when she accidentally cut her finger with safety scissors. Mom screamed at me like I'd handed her a knife. I was in the other room. I started to disappear in other ways too. I stopped asking for things. No more birthday party requests. No more school trip permission slips. I learned early on that the answer was always some version of, "Not now, Hannah," or "We don't have time for that." But somehow, there was always time and money for Madison's activities. Ballet, piano, pottery, horseback riding, you name it. By the time I was 12, I'd learned to find value in being useful. I cooked dinner, folded laundry, and vacuumed without being asked. Not because I was praised, but because it was expected. I figured that maybe, just maybe, if I kept the house running, someone would eventually notice me. Say thank you. Tell me they were proud. They didn't. Looking back, I don't think my parents were cruel. I think they were blind to the quiet damage that favoritism can do to a child's heart. It doesn't leave bruises, it leaves questions that follow you into adulthood. Am I enough? Did I matter? Was I ever really loved? I was there, in every room. But to them, I was just the girl in the background, holding the napkins, waiting for someone to look up and see her. By the time I was 8 years old, I could make a full dinner by myself. I don't mean microwaving macaroni and cheese, I mean cooking actual meals. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans from a can, and cornbread from a box mix. I had learned to season, stir, serve, and scrape pans clean before most kids my age could even pour a bowl of cereal without spilling milk everywhere. Meanwhile, my younger sister Madison didn't even know where the mop was kept. That's not an exaggeration. One time, I asked her to help me clean up a mess in the kitchen. She'd spilled orange juice all over the floor and just walked away, like it was someone else's problem. I handed her the mop, and she stared at it like I'd just given her a Rubik's Cube. "I don't know how to use this," she said with a pout. "Besides, you're better at cleaning." Better at cleaning? At 8 years old, that's what I was better at? Not art. Not reading. Not anything that earned praise. Just chores. Just being the background worker who kept the house from falling apart. Madison was the princess. She never lifted a finger, never washed a dish, never even put her dirty laundry in the hamper. And nobody seemed to mind. Not my mom, who would just smile and say, "Let her enjoy being young." Not my dad, who'd glance over the newspaper and mutter, "Hannah, give your sister a hand, would you?" It didn't matter that I was a child, too. They didn't see that part. I wasn't allowed to be young. I was the fixer, the helper, the cleaner. If something went wrong, somehow it was my fault even if I wasn't there. Madison scraped her knee at the playground. "Hannah, why weren't you watching her?" She knocked over a glass of milk. "Why didn't you set the table properly?" One time, she threw up after eating too much candy at a birthday party, and I got scolded for not telling her to stop. I was 10. There was this constant, crushing expectation. Be responsible, be reliable, and most of all, be invisible while doing it. I never got thanked, never got paid an allowance, and heaven forbid I forgot to do something I'd hear about it for days. Once, I left a pile of folded laundry on the stairs instead of putting it away. Mom stepped over it 5 times before yelling at me that I was lazy. Lazy. After cleaning the kitchen, walking the dog, doing my homework, and making dinner. You know what Madison was doing at the time? Painting her nails on the couch while watching cartoons. It wasn't just about chores, though. It was about trust, or the lack of it. If something went missing in the house, I was the first suspect. Remote control, phone charger, even Dad's glasses. "Hannah, did you move them?" But if Madison broke something, like the time she spilled nail polish all over the carpet, it was just a mistake. She'd cry, and Mom would hug her. "It's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen." But my accidents were careless. My mistakes were disappointments. And every time I tried to explain, it just sounded like complaining. "You're older," they'd say. "Set an example." I tried to. I really did. I thought maybe if I kept doing everything right, kept being the perfect daughter, they'd finally notice me. Maybe they'd say, "Thank you," or tell me they were proud. But praise wasn't for me. Praise was for Madison, whether she earned it or not. There was this one night I'll never forget. I had stayed up late making dinner because Mom got stuck at work, and Dad was on a conference call. Madison was supposed to help, but she wandered off halfway through to FaceTime her friend about a new dress. I made spaghetti with garlic bread, set the table, even lit a little candle in the middle like I'd seen in restaurants. When they sat down to eat, no one said a word. Not a thank you, not a compliment. Just silence and the clinking of forks. Halfway through the meal, Madison looked up and said, "This sauce is kind of salty." And my mom, without missing a beat, said, "Hannah, you need to pay more attention when you cook." That was it. That was the response to my effort. So, I learned not to try so hard, not to expect praise. I did what needed to be done, not because anyone appreciated it, but because if I didn't, no one else would. I became the family's unpaid housekeeper, the invisible caretaker, the one they counted on but never celebrated. And somewhere along the way, I started to believe them that my worth was in what I could do for others, not in who I was. When I was 13, I thought my life might finally be turning a corner. It was spring in Iowa gray skies, melting snow, and that hopeful scent of fresh grass in the air. Our history teacher, Mrs. Connors, stood in front of the class with a clipboard and an announcement that made the entire room buzz. There would be a special field trip to Washington, D.C., a full weekend visiting historic landmarks, touring the Capitol, and even meeting a local senator. Only 12 students from our district would be selected. I had never wanted something so badly. I poured myself into the application essay. I stayed after school for extra help. When Mrs. Connors pulled me aside 2 weeks later and said, "Congratulations, Hannah, you made the list," I felt like the world had finally cracked open and let a little sunlight in. I ran all the way home, practically skipping, the permission slip fluttering in my hand like a golden ticket. For the first time in forever, something was going to be about me. Not Madison, not her dance recital or another birthday bash or some new hobby Mom wanted to show off. Just me, a chance to see more of the world, to feel important, to matter. I couldn't wait to tell my mom. She was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through her tablet when I burst through the door, breathless and beaming. "Mom, you're not going to believe it. I got chosen for the Washington, D.C. trip. We'll tour the Smithsonian and the Capitol, and—" I held out the paper, my heart practically thudding in my ears. She glanced up barely. "When is it?" "Next weekend," I said, still grinning. "Friday to Sunday. We stay overnight in a hotel." Her expression changed. Not with joy, no, not even with interest. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "You can't go." The words hit me like ice water. "What? Why not?" "Madison has her regional gymnastics meet that weekend," she said, as if it were obvious. "We need your help with costumes and snacks. It's a big event." I blinked, confused. "Can't Dad help? Or you like usual?" Her eyes narrowed. "Hannah, don't be selfish. Your sister needs you." Those words, that tone, like my dreams were a nuisance, like asking for something was a burden. I stood there stunned, gripping the permission slip like it might dissolve. "This is important to me," I said, my voice trembling. "This trip only happens every few years. I won't get another chance." She sighed like I was being dramatic. "There'll be other trips." But there weren't. That was the only one of its kind. My classmates went. They took selfies with the Lincoln Memorial, rode the elevator to the top of the Washington Monument, and came home with souvenirs and stories that would last a lifetime. And me? I spent that weekend in a crowded high school gym, holding a tray of sliced oranges, sewing sequins on Madison's leotard. I smiled through gritted teeth as my mom raved about Madison's form and cheered like she was competing at the Olympics. Madison won a bronze medal in her age group, and we threw her a party. No one even asked what I had missed. I remember sitting on the bleachers after everyone had left, watching the janitor sweep up confetti. My hands were sticky from juice cups. My knees ached from kneeling on the gym floor. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just being overlooked. I was being erased. They never even considered that I might have dreams of my own, that I might want to be more than the background helper. My joy, my pride, my opportunity, it meant nothing if it inconvenienced Madison's schedule. It wasn't just disappointment. It was betrayal. Because parents are supposed to show up for their kids. They're supposed to encourage them to reach, to grow, to explore. Mine clipped my wings and didn't even notice when I stopped trying to fly. That trip could have changed my life. But instead, it became the moment I stopped hoping they'd ever truly see me. The acceptance letter came on a Thursday afternoon, tucked between a utility bill and a grocery store flyer. I remember staring at the envelope for a few seconds, my fingers frozen. I hadn't told anyone I'd applied, not because I was hiding it, but because I already knew what kind of reaction I'd get. And I wasn't ready for the disappointment. But when I tore it open and read the words, "Congratulations, Hannah," something inside me lit up like a match in the dark. It wasn't some elite private college. It was Clear Ridge State University, a decent public school a few hours away. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. I had worked my butt off for this. Long nights at the library, weekends volunteering, juggling AP classes while still doing all the cooking, cleaning, and grocery runs that my family relied on. I'd even secured a partial scholarship. It wouldn't cover everything, but it was a solid start. For once, I had something to be proud of, something that wasn't tied to my chores, or to helping Madison with her art project, or sewing rhinestones onto a costume. I waited until dinner to share the news. Dad was slicing up roast chicken. Mom was scrolling through her phone. Madison, of course, was on the couch, flipping through photos from her latest ballet showcase. I slid the letter across the table, my heart hammering in my chest. "I got in," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Clear Ridge, I got accepted." Dad didn't look up. "That's nice," he muttered like I'd just told him the weather. I took a breath. "It comes with a partial scholarship, but I'll need a little help to cover the rest. Just for the first year, I promise I'll work. I'll pay you back." Mom finally glanced up. "Hannah, we're not taking out loans." "I'm not asking for loans," I said quickly. "I just need some help to get started. I'll sign something if you want. You can even charge me interest." Dad finally looked at me. "College isn't for everyone," he said, shrugging. "Some people are better off getting a job right out of school." Then Madison chimed in without even lifting her eyes from her phone. "Yeah, maybe she should have thought of that before spending all her time doing homework." It felt like someone had kicked me in the chest. They had watched me stay up until 2 a.m. studying. They had seen me skip outings, parties, even meals to get ahead. They knew how hard I'd worked. But now, when I asked for the smallest bit of support, I was being told that I was wasting my time. And the worst part? I knew they had the money. They'd spent thousands on Madison over the years: ballet lessons, new leotards, art workshops, private piano coaching after she decided dance was too limiting. They never blinked at the cost. If she wanted it, they made it happen. But me? I asked for help building a future, and they told me to apply at the mall. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, the acceptance letter clutched to my chest like it might disappear. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. Just hollow. Because in that moment, I finally understood something I'd been trying to deny for years. It wasn't just favoritism. It wasn't just being overlooked. It was indifference. They didn't believe in me, not really. They didn't see a future when they looked at me. I was useful when they needed a driver, a babysitter, a maid. But when I wanted something of my own, they didn't think I deserved it. Or worse, they didn't care. And so I stopped asking. I stopped sharing. I stopped hoping they'd ever look at me the way they looked at Madison, like someone worth investing in. There was a little bakery 2 blocks off Main Street, the kind of place where the door chimed when you walked in. The coffee was always brewing, and the air smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread no matter the time of day. It was called Jack and Elaine's, named after the owner's Nora's parents. Nora had been my best friend since third grade, and over the years her family had become my quiet refuge, the place I ran to when the walls of my own house felt like they were caving in. The first time I stepped inside the bakery, I was 12. My hair was still damp from walking in the rain, and I'd just had another fight with my mom, something about laundry or school. I don't even remember anymore. But what I do remember is Elaine handing me a dry towel and a warm blueberry muffin, no questions asked. Jack gave me a half smile and said, "You look like you've had a morning. Go sit down, kid." From that day on, I kept finding reasons to go back. After school, on weekends, even during holidays, anytime I needed to feel like I mattered to someone. I started helping out where I could, folding pastry boxes, sweeping the floors, labeling the cookie jars. Nothing big. But Elaine always noticed. She'd smile and say, "Thanks, sweetheart," like I had just saved the business. When I turned 16, they gave me a part-time job. Minimum wage, flexible hours, and all the free coffee I could drink. But more than the paycheck, what mattered was how they treated me, like I wasn't invisible. Like I wasn't just Madison's sister or the household help. I was Hannah, a real person, a kid worth knowing. They'd ask about my day. They remembered when I had big tests and wished me luck. Jack even once said, "You've got a good head for numbers," after watching me handle a stack of receipts like a pro. No one in my own home had ever said something like that to me. When the college acceptance letter came and my parents shot me down without a second thought, I didn't cry in my bedroom, I went to the bakery. I walked in, shoulders slumped, trying to hold myself together. Elaine was wiping down the counter, and Jack was restocking the pie display. Nora had just left for a volunteer shift at the library. Elaine took one look at me and said, "Sit. I'll get the tea." I don't remember exactly how I got the words out, but I told them everything. About the letter, the scholarship, how badly I wanted to go, and how my parents had told me to get a job at the mall like I was asking for a trip to Disneyland, not an education. I expected awkward silence or sympathetic nods, but Jack set down his tray of cherry pies and said something that changed my life. "We'll help." I blinked. "What?" Elaine nodded. "We'll loan you what you need for tuition. No interest, no pressure. You can pay it back when you can." I shook my head. "I can't ask you to." "You didn't," Jack interrupted, gently but firmly. "We offered. You've worked hard for this, Hannah. You deserve a chance." I didn't know what to say. These people weren't my family by blood, but in that moment, they were more of a family than anyone I'd ever had. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I tried to blink them away. But Elaine just reached across the table and patted my hand. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're proud of you." Those 5 words, "We're proud of you," meant more to me than any award, medal, or straight-A report card I'd ever brought home. That night, I went home and packed a small bag. Not everything, just the essentials. The acceptance letter went on top, like a promise to myself that things were finally going to be different. And they were. That simple act of kindness, a quiet offer from 2 people who ran a bakery in a sleepy town, changed the entire course of my life. They didn't have to step in, but they did. And because of them, I didn't just have a future, I had hope. I left without saying goodbye. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no slamming of doors, no last-minute confrontation in the kitchen. I simply packed my things one quiet evening, zipped up a worn-out suitcase, and placed my university acceptance letter carefully on top like a badge of courage. I didn't expect anyone to stop me, and no one did. My parents were busy making breakfast for Madison the next morning. My dad had already left for work. Madison didn't even look up from her phone. I walked out the front door with a lump in my throat and a determination I didn't know I had. The drive to Clear Ridge State University wasn't long, just a few hours west along the interstate, but emotionally, it felt like crossing an ocean. I was leaving behind not just a house, but years of being invisible, blamed, and burdened. I wasn't running away. I was walking toward something. Toward freedom. Toward self-worth. Toward a version of me that didn't exist in the shadows. The dorm was small, barely enough space for a twin bed, a desk, and a dresser. The mattress had springs that squeaked every time I turned over, and my roommate, Steph, had a habit of blasting country music at odd hours. But I didn't care. It was mine, my space, my fresh start. No more chores I didn't sign up for. No more guilt trips disguised as dinner conversations. No more being told who I was, what I should do, or who I should become. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without holding my shoulders tight. The adjustment wasn't easy. I worked long hours at Jack and Elaine's bakery weekends, evenings, sometimes before class if the morning crew was short. Between that and full-time classes, sleep became a luxury. I lived off coffee and peanut butter sandwiches. My budget was tighter than a drum, and there were nights I cried into my pillow from pure exhaustion, but I never once wanted to go back. Because every challenge I faced was mine. Every hard-earned dollar, every late-night paper, every burned-out moment, it was all part of building my life, brick by brick. I wasn't cleaning up someone else's mess. I wasn't being punished for someone else's mistake. I was finally building something of my own. Steph and I, despite our different tastes in music, grew close. We'd stay up late studying for exams, sharing microwave popcorn and venting about professors who seemed to grade based on mood swings. It wasn't exactly like the friendships you see in movies, but it was real, honest. She saw me not as the responsible sibling, not as the quiet girl in the corner, but just as Hannah. That meant everything. Classes were tough. Business administration sounded bland when I picked it, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed. Budgeting, project management, strategic thinking. Skills I had unknowingly sharpened for years, just by keeping a chaotic household running. Suddenly, all those years of being the dependable one weren't wasted, they were preparing me. And the bakery? It became more than a job. It was my safe place, a warm kitchen, the smell of rising dough, regulars who knew my name. I kept the books, managed orders, learned how to lead a small team. Jack once told me I had a manager's eye. Elaine said I had a gift for turning chaos into calm. They didn't say those things to be nice. They meant it. And when they did, something inside me healed. Just a little. One Sunday afternoon, I sat by the campus lake with a coffee in hand, the sun warming my face. I watched students laughing, biking past, tossing frisbees. And I realized I had made it. I was still figuring things out, still broke, still tired, but I was free. I no longer lived in a world where love came with conditions. I didn't need permission to dream. I didn't need to explain my choices, justify my worth, or beg to be seen. I had escaped not just my house, but the idea that I was only valuable if I was useful. And in the quiet of that new life, I began to find something I never thought I'd have. Peace. Graduation day came with the kind of sky you only get in early summer, wide, blue, and full of promise. I crossed the stage in my black gown, holding a diploma that felt heavier than any paper I'd ever touched. It wasn't just a certificate, it was proof. Proof that all the late nights, all the years of being overlooked, of being told no and "you're not enough," had led to this. By August, I had landed a job at a mid-sized but well-respected consulting firm in downtown Chicago. It wasn't flashy, but it was solid, steady salary, health benefits, and a desk by a window that looked out over Lake Michigan. I signed the lease on my first solo apartment, nothing fancy, just one bedroom and a little balcony, but it was mine. Mine. The mornings were early and the nights were long, but I didn't mind. Every spreadsheet I built, every client call I answered, every meeting I let it all felt like progress. I bought my own groceries, paid my bills on time, and even started setting money aside. I kept a copy of my original acceptance letter from Clear Ridge folded in the back of my planner, just as a reminder. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Then the phone rang. It was a Thursday evening. I'd just gotten home from work, kicked off my shoes, and was heating up leftovers when I saw the name flash across my screen. Mom. I hadn't heard much from my parents since college. Our calls had become brief, surface level. I'd learned to stop hoping for anything more. Still, I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. "Hi, Mom." Her voice cracked. "Oh, Hannah, we need to talk." Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. There was a pause. Then the confession came tumbling out. "My father had made a series of bad investments," she said. "Stocks, real estate, things they didn't fully understand. The details were vague, but the bottom line was clear. They were in trouble. Bills were piling up. The mortgage was overdue. They were falling behind, and they didn't know what to do. We were hoping," she said hesitantly, "that you might be able to help, just until we get back on our feet." I sat there, spoon paused in midair, trying to process what I was hearing. These were the same parents who told me college wasn't for everyone, who wouldn't spare a dime for tuition, who had poured thousands into Madison's hobbies without blinking. Now they wanted me to help them? I could hear Dad's voice faintly in the background. "Tell her we'll pay her back. Eventually." A few years ago, I would have cried, would have bent over backward trying to prove I was worthy of their love. But now I was different. Stronger. Smarter. Calmer. I took a slow breath. "What kind of help are you asking for?" "Maybe just a small credit card," she said, rushing the words. "Just for essentials, groceries, utilities, nothing extravagant." I paused. "I can set something up," I said, "but it'll have a hard limit. 1,500 a month. Necessities only. I'll monitor it." "Oh, thank you, sweetheart," she said, her voice bubbling with sudden relief. "You don't know what this means to us." But I did. I knew exactly what it meant. It meant that the daughter who once had to beg for college support was now the one being called for financial rescue. The girl they once ignored had become their lifeline. And though I agreed to help, I made one thing very clear to myself. This wasn't about love or making things right. This was business. Transactions. Nothing more. The card was set up, tied directly to an account I checked daily. The first few months were uneventful. Grocery stores, gas stations, a utility payment or two. They even called to thank me every once in a while, their tone a little too sweet to be sincere. But I didn't engage. I kept the boundaries firm. I wasn't the girl folding laundry in the shadows anymore. I was Hannah from Chicago. Degree in business. Apartment downtown. A steady job, and a future I built with my own two hands. The tables had turned, and this time, I was the one holding the cards. When I agreed to help my parents, it came with conditions. Strict ones. $1,500 a month. No more. It was to be used only for necessities: groceries, gas, electricity, the kinds of things people genuinely need to stay afloat. I even put it in writing. Not to be petty, but because I knew them. I knew how quickly a little help could turn into a shopping spree or a last-minute luxury treat they somehow justified. I wasn't naive anymore. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. I checked the card statements weekly, just part of my routine. Walmart, Shell gas station, the occasional dinner at a chain restaurant. Nothing crazy. I monitored it like a hawk, but never saw anything too concerning. I even started to think, maybe this is working. Maybe we're finally finding a healthy balance. They called occasionally, always with sugar-coated gratitude. "You're a lifesaver, sweetie. We're so proud of how successful you've become." They never said sorry, never acknowledged the years they left me in the shadows while Madison shined, but I'd stopped expecting that. My help wasn't about healing old wounds. It was about doing the right thing now, even if they never did it for me. Then came the Tuesday that shattered the illusion. It was a regular workday. I was between meetings, sipping lukewarm coffee and clicking through my budget tracker when something odd caught my eye. $600. A charge to Les Belles Boutique, a luxury clothing store in downtown Evanston, known for designer dresses, handbags, and overpriced heels. My stomach dropped. I refreshed the page. Still there. $602.49. Charged just 2 days prior. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe fraud? Maybe someone had stolen the card? But when I called my mom, she answered on the second ring, chipper as ever. "Oh, that? Yes, that's for Madison," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She needed a new dress. "For what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "She's meeting Ryan's parents this weekend," Mom explained. "It's a big dinner. She wanted to look her best. You know how important first impressions are." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, this card is for necessities. You used it for a $600 dress?" "She didn't have anything appropriate," she said, like that justified it. "You know Madison. She needs to make a good impression." I stood there frozen, holding my phone like it had suddenly become a block of ice. "A good impression?" I repeated slowly. "With my money?" "Oh, Hannah," she sighed, as if I was the one being difficult. "You make plenty now. And we've been so careful with the card. This is just one thing." It wasn't just one thing. It was a breach of trust, plain and simple. After all those years of being told no when I asked for a set of art supplies, or a chance to visit Washington, D.C., or even just a pair of jeans that fit, this was how they used the help I finally gave? So Madison could play dress up in front of her rich boyfriend's family? I didn't say much after that. Just hung up and sat down hard on the edge of my bed. My hands were trembling with that familiar cocktail of anger and disappointment. It wasn't just the money. It was what it symbolized. It meant nothing had changed. I'd left home, earned my degree, worked long nights and double shifts to build a life of my own, but they still saw me the same way as a resource, a wallet, a safety net. They hadn't respected my boundaries. They hadn't even asked. It was exactly like when I was 13, sewing sequins on Madison's leotard instead of going on the school trip of my dreams. Only now, the sequins cost $600 and came in the form of a boutique cocktail dress. I logged into the credit account and flagged the transaction. Not because I planned to cancel it, that would only ignite more chaos than I had energy for that week, but because I needed the paper trail, the reminder. The evidence that even with a monthly limit and adult status, I still had to fight to be respected. That night, I sat in my apartment overlooking the city lights and realized something. Boundaries only work if you're willing to enforce them. And from that day forward, I stopped assuming my family would respect mine on good faith. Because clearly, faith wasn't enough. It started with a single photo. I was at work, buried under quarterly reports and sipping my third cup of black coffee when my phone buzzed with a notification. Instagram. Normally, I would have ignored it. Social media had become more of a habit than a hobby, but something made me swipe. It was Madison. The caption read, "Engaged. So blessed to be celebrating with family in Monaco." Couldn't ask for more. The picture showed Madison in a white sundress, beaming, her arms wrapped around a man I didn't recognize. They were standing on the deck of a luxury yacht, sparkling blue waters behind them like something out of a travel magazine. My parents were there too, Mom holding a glass of champagne, Dad in aviator sunglasses looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. I stared at the screen, frozen. Monaco? I kept scrolling. There were more photos, clinking glasses at a Michelin-starred restaurant, lounging in a luxury spa, shopping along the French Riviera, smiling, toasting, celebrating, and not a single word to me. I hadn't been invited. They had planned an international engagement party. They had flown to one of the most expensive places on Earth. They had rented a yacht, hired photographers, eaten foie gras and taken spa selfies, all without me. My heart dropped. But the dread wasn't fully formed until I opened my banking app. The charges were there. All of them. First-class flights for 6, $19,200. Yacht rental, $28,000. Hotel suites at Hôtel de Paris, $6,800. Spa packages, designer boutiques, champagne dinners. It went on and on. Over $52,000 in charges. All on the card I had given them for groceries and utilities. It felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I couldn't breathe. My ears started ringing, and for a second I thought I was going to throw up right there in my office, with spreadsheets open and coworkers chattering a few feet away. I stepped out and dialed my mom. She picked up immediately, her voice light and airy. "Hi, sweetie, how's work?" "Where are you?" I asked, voice cold and shaking. There was a pause. I could hear music and water splashing in the background. "Oh, we're just taking a little break," she said. "You know, after all the stress lately." "A break?" I said. "You're in Monaco with my credit card." More silence. Then a defensive tone crept in. "Hannah, don't be dramatic." "Dramatic? You maxed out the card. You spent over 50 grand on a luxury vacation and you didn't even think to tell me?" "This was about Madison and Ryan," she said, suddenly irritated. "It was their moment. You didn't need to be there." Before I could respond, I heard Madison's voice in the background. "Is that Hannah? Let me talk to her." She took the phone and said, "Can you not ruin everything for once?" "Ryan's parents are here. This trip is important. You'd just make it awkward." That did it. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was done. I didn't say another word. I hung up the phone, logged into the credit account, and began canceling everything. Yacht rental? Gone. Spa appointments? Canceled. Return flights? Revoked. Dining reservations? Cut off. Then I shut down the card completely. The phone started blowing up almost instantly. Voicemails, texts, missed calls. From Mom, Dad, Madison, even Ryan. My inbox flooded with everything from guilt trips to outright threats. "Fix this now, young lady. You're embarrassing the family. You'll regret this. Don't ruin this for Madison." I didn't respond. I blocked their numbers, closed the app, and turned off my phone. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. They had crossed a line, and I wasn't the doormat they used to know. I wasn't going to fund their lies. I wasn't going to pay for my sister's fairy tale while being treated like the ugly stepsister. No more guilt. No more begging. No more pretending that blood equals loyalty, because the people who were supposed to protect me had used me. And now, I was done protecting them. My hands were shaking when I clicked the final button. Cancel. The yacht reservation vanished. The $28,000 charge reversed. Next came the spa packages, luxury hotel bookings, the prepaid tours of Monte Carlo. All gone. I moved through the transactions methodically, like I was checking items off a to-do list. Return flights? Canceled. No more first-class seats back to the States. And then, for the grand finale, I deactivated the card completely. The same card I had once handed over in a gesture of reluctant trust, hoping my family might finally treat me with respect. Now it was over. They'd spent over $50,000 on a luxury engagement celebration that I hadn't even been invited to. Not only had they excluded me, they'd used my money to do it. This wasn't just betrayal, it was calculated, gleeful theft wrapped in entitlement. And I was done playing along. I sat back in my chair, still trembling but steady enough to feel something unexpected rising inside me. Peace. Not joy, not anger, just calm. The kind that only comes when you finally stop letting people step on your heart. The silence didn't last long. Within the hour, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. First, it was my mom. Her voice in the voicemail was syrupy, sweet, too sweet. "Honey, we need to talk. This is just a misunderstanding. Call me back, okay?" Next was my dad. His tone wasn't sweet at all. "Fix this now, Hannah. You're embarrassing the family." Then came Madison, who didn't even bother pretending. "What the hell did you do? You better undo this or I swear you'll regret it." Even Ryan chimed in, his voice irritated and nervous. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but you need to call us back. Now." I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't even listen to the rest of the messages. I blocked their numbers, powered off my phone, and threw it into a drawer. They were stranded in Europe. No yacht, no luxury hotel, no return flights, and no money. For once, they were the ones left holding the consequences, not me. They had treated me like an ATM, a silent investor in a fantasy I had no part in. But they'd forgotten the one rule of real-world transactions. You don't get to cash out when you've burned the bridge. The next morning, out of curiosity more than anything else, I logged into Instagram. Madison's newest post was already up. It was a long, self-pitying caption, paired with a blurry photo of her sitting at a cafe in what looked like a less than glamorous corner of Nice. Sometimes family can be the most toxic part of your life. I trusted someone and got stabbed in the back. Some people just can't handle your happiness. Heartbroken, toxic siblings. Are some people change for the worse? The comments were full of sympathy. "You deserve better, girl. Cut her off for good. Jealousy is ugly." But they didn't know the whole story. Not yet. So I posted my own update, something I hadn't done in months. A simple caption. "For those wondering, here's the real story." Attached were screenshots, the bank statements, the $600 dress, the yacht, the flights, the $52,000 they had charged without permission. And finally, a short paragraph. "I gave my family a card for groceries and emergencies. They used it to fund a luxury engagement vacation without my knowledge or consent. I wasn't invited, informed, or thanked. I canceled everything. Actions have consequences." Within hours, the post blew up. People shared it, commented, defended me. Madison's narrative crumbled under the weight of receipts and reality. Her comment section, once filled with blind support, turned brutal. "Wait, you didn't pay for that trip yourself? You used your sister's money and didn't invite her? Entitled much?" Through mutual friends, I heard the aftermath. With no yacht and no return flights, they were forced to scramble. They booked economy seats on a budget airline and spent their final days in Europe at a cheap roadside motel outside of Nice. Ryan's wealthy parents were furious. They thought my family was well off and had helped pay for the trip, only to learn it was funded entirely by me. The engagement didn't survive. Apparently, Madison snapped at Ryan's parents when they asked about the money. She told them, "If you can't afford Monaco, that's not my fault." Ryan ended it on the spot. When they returned to the US, the damage was permanent. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't wonder if I'd gone too far. I didn't doubt myself. I had enforced a boundary and stood my ground. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And let me tell you something. After a lifetime of being blamed, used, and forgotten, it felt damn good to finally say enough. It didn't take long for everything to unravel. The night I posted the screenshots, the bank charges, the photos, the cold facts, was the night the illusion ended. For years, my family had hidden behind a carefully curated mask of perfection. My sister Madison, the golden child with her flawless hair and sparkling smile. My parents, the doting mother and wise father, always showing up in Facebook photos like a Hallmark card. But in one post, 5 screenshots and 2 paragraphs, their mask cracked. And by morning, it shattered completely. My notifications were overflowing. Comments flooded in from strangers, friends of friends, even people I hadn't heard from since high school. "You're brave for sharing this. The entitlement in this family is unbelievable. This is exactly why boundaries matter." I didn't respond to the comments. I didn't need to. The truth spoke for itself. Madison's Instagram, once a shrine of curated moments and breathy captions about gratitude, suddenly became a war zone. Her followers, many of whom had cheered her engagement just days earlier, started asking questions. Real ones. "Did you really not invite your sister on a trip she paid for? How could you think this was okay? This whole family is built on lies." The silence from her side was deafening at first, but then came her response, an Instagram story with a shaky, tear-filled voice and a barely there apology. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she said. "I was just trying to celebrate something important in my life. I didn't handle it the right way. But I never meant to hurt anyone." It was more of a PR move than an apology, the kind of thing you post when you're trying to clean up a mess without admitting you made one. But it was too late. The damage was done, and not just online. Through a mutual friend, I found out that Ryan's family, his real family, not the dream Madison had tried to sell them, had been furious when they learned the truth. They had believed Madison came from a stable, successful background, a tight-knit, supportive household that had helped plan this luxurious celebration. But when they discovered that the trip was bankrolled by a daughter who wasn't even invited, the entire engagement lost its sparkle. Apparently, Ryan's mother had confronted my parents at the hotel. "You used your daughter like a sponsor. That's not family, that's manipulation." Madison made things worse by lashing out. "Well, maybe you shouldn't be so cheap," she reportedly snapped. "If you cared so much about appearances, maybe you should have paid for the yacht." That was the final nail in the coffin. Ryan broke off the engagement on the spot. No arguments, no second chances. Just a quiet, disappointed shake of the head, and he walked out the door. And just like that, the future Madison had built her entire identity around glamorous wedding, elite social circle, wealthy in-laws was gone. The family came back from Europe humiliated. No yacht, no ring, no fairy tale ending. What they did have was a one-way ticket back to the real world. And for the first time, they couldn't spin it. They couldn't bury this with smiles and staged photos. They couldn't blame me, either, not this time. Not when the receipts were public, the truth undeniable, and the world watching. A week later, they showed up at my apartment. I watched them from the peephole, my mom in tears, my dad with a face full of regret, Madison standing awkwardly to the side. They knocked gently, then harder. Then they started pleading. "Hannah, we just want to talk. We made a mistake. We didn't mean for this to go so far." I sat on the couch, phone in hand, silent. For once, I didn't feel the urge to open the door, to fix it, to forgive, to make things easier for everyone else at the expense of myself. After 20 minutes, they left. The building manager told me later that they'd tried to convince him it was an emergency, but he called me first. I told him not to let them in. I wasn't being cold. I was being clear. They had crossed a line, and they didn't get to walk back over it just because things were uncomfortable now. I hadn't ruined their lives. They had done that all on their own. What I had done finally was speak the truth. And as it turned out, The truth had a longer reach than any yacht, any diamond ring, or any filtered post could ever offer. They came to my apartment on a Sunday afternoon. I knew they would. I'd been expecting it. In the same way you expect a storm after watching the sky turn that uneasy shade of gray, the fallout from the Monaco trip had left them stranded socially, emotionally, and financially. Their reputation was in ruins, Madison's engagement was over, and their tight little narrative of perfect family had come completely undone. So, of course, they came to me. I watched from behind the peephole as my mom stood in the hallway, clutching a tissue in one hand and pounding on the door with the other. My dad was beside her, arms folded, face lined with something that almost looked like shame. Madison was there too, though she didn't say much, just stood slightly behind them, arms crossed, looking down at her shoes. "Hannah?" my mother called, voice trembling. "Sweetheart, please, just let us explain." My dad's voice followed. "We need to talk. We know we made mistakes." They stood there, knocking, waiting, hoping. But I didn't open the door. I couldn't. Not anymore. Because this wasn't the first time they had come to me in crisis, only the first time they didn't get what they wanted. For years, I had been the fixer, the helper, the go-to problem solver when things went sideways. I was the quiet one, the dependable one, the one they could lean on without ever asking how much weight I was carrying. But not this time. This time, I was the one holding the boundary. I sat on my couch, legs tucked under me, a cup of tea cooling in my hand. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't feel rage or triumph or sadness. I just felt still. I had built this life brick by brick through late-night study sessions, double shifts at the bakery, canceled plans, and silent determination. I had earned my job, my apartment, my peace. And I wasn't going to trade it all away for another round of, "We're family, so you owe us." Because family, at its best, is love. At its worst, it's leverage. And for too long, they had used that word family as a leash. But I had cut the leash, quietly, carefully, completely. They knocked for a while longer. My mom's voice cracked with desperation. "Please, Hannah, we don't want to lose you." But that's the thing. They never really had me to begin with. Not the real me. The me who stayed up late drawing pictures in grade school that no one hung on the fridge. The me who made dinner at age 8 while Madison practiced cartwheels. The me who got into college with scholarships and dreams, only to be told to get a job at the mall. The me who paid for utilities, rent, and groceries, just to watch them spend it all on a yacht I wasn't even invited aboard. They had used my loyalty like currency, and now I had nothing left to give them, not because I was cruel, but because I was finally full of something they never thought I deserved: self-respect. After 20 minutes, they left. I heard the elevator doors slide shut. Later that day, the building manager called, said they'd tried to convince him it was an emergency, asked to be buzzed in. I told them no, he said. Didn't seem like the kind of emergency I'm authorized to respond to. I thanked him and went back to my tea. That night, my best friend Nora came over with takeout chicken fried rice and sesame noodles from the little place down the block. We ate on the couch, legs up, the TV playing some old sitcom rerun we weren't really watching. She looked at me and grinned. "You know your post's been shared in like 8 different family drama groups?" I laughed. Just what I wanted. Internet fame for cutting off my parents. "Not cutting them off," she said. "You just stop letting them walk all over you." She was right. They might still call. They might still send guilt-laced texts or long emails about healing and rebuilding. But I wouldn't answer, not unless they came with truth, accountability, and no expectations. Because I was no longer the invisible girl, or the family ATM, or the emotional cleanup crew. I was Hannah, no title, no role, no apology. And for the first time in my life, that was more than enough. As we journey through life, one of the hardest lessons to learn is that love, especially from family, should never come at the cost of your dignity. Hannah's story is a powerful reminder that being dependable does not mean being disposable. Many of us, especially in our earlier years, learn to serve others quietly, sacrificing our own needs to keep the peace, support the household, or live up to someone else's expectations. But the truth is, being kind does not mean being used. Setting boundaries is not an act of rebellion, it is an act of self-respect. For older generations who were raised to keep the family together no matter what, this lesson can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. Yet it's never too late to recognize your value and to expect fair treatment in return. The people who truly love you will honor your worth, not just your willingness to give. This story also teaches us the strength of walking away from toxic patterns, even when they come from those closest to us. Sometimes, the most loving act is choosing peace over pleasing. In the end, Hannah didn't seek revenge, she sought freedom, and in doing so, she gave herself permission to heal. Let her journey remind us all. Your life, your voice, and your heart matter. It is never too late to reclaim your worth and to live the rest of your life on your own terms, with quiet strength and unwavering grace. Thank you so much for watching this powerful full story on Silent Wars. If this story touched you, please show your support by hitting like and clicking subscribe to join our growing community. Every click helps us bring more real voices to light.